Los Angeles, February 1973. The private gymnasium on Sunset Boulevard was closed to the public that Tuesday afternoon. No cameras were permitted inside. No reporters had been invited. The small group of people gathered in the converted warehouse understood what happened here would never be discussed officially. Most of them believed Bruce Lee was making a mistake. Muhammad Ali stood in the center of the room, shadowboxing with the fluid grace that had made him the most famous athlete in the world. His movements carried an authority that filled every corner of the space. At 6 feet 3 inches and 210 pounds, he moved with a combination of size and speed that seemed to mock the laws of physics. 20 feet away, Bruce Lee sat quietly on a wooden bench, watching. The contrast was immediate and uncomfortable. Ali commanded attention through pure physical presence. His voice carried across rooms, even when he whispered. Every gesture suggested supreme confidence in his ability to dominate any situation through force or charisma. Lee occupied space differently. Smaller by 75 pounds, quieter by nature. He observed rather than performed, analyzed rather than demonstrated. To most of the people in Ali's circle, he looked like what he was supposed to be, a television actor who knew some martial arts choreography. The meeting had been arranged by a mutual acquaintance who thought the two fighters should know each other, not for publicity, not for any official purpose, just curiosity about what would happen when the heavyweight champion of the world met the man some people were calling the most dangerous fighter in Hollywood. Ali's entourage filled half the room. Trainers, managers, friends, hangers-on, who always surrounded successful athletes. They talked among themselves, occasionally glancing at Lee with expressions that ranged from polite interest to barely concealed skepticism. Lee had come alone. The disparity in their worlds was obvious to everyone present. Ali lived in a universe of constant validation. Crowds chanted his name. Reporters recorded his every word. His fights were watched by millions of people who paid significant money to see him perform. Lee's fame was different. Television appearances that most boxing people had never seen. Movie roles that were still being negotiated. A reputation built largely on demonstrations to small groups rather than public competitions. In Ali's world, reputation without public validation was suspect. Talk without proof was just entertainment. And Bruce Lee, despite his growing notoriety, had never proven himself against anyone who mattered in the way that mattered to professional fighters. Ali finished his shadowboxing routine and turned his attention to Lee for the first time since the introductions had been made. "You're the karate guy," Ali said, wiping sweat from his face with a white towel. "I heard you're supposed to be fast." Lee nodded once. "I study martial arts." "Martial arts," Ali repeated, the words carrying subtle dismissal. "That's different from fighting, right? All those forms and demonstrations. Pretty to watch. But what happens when someone's actually trying to hurt you?" The room grew quieter. Several conversations stopped as people tuned in to what was happening between the two fighters. Lee did not react defensively. He studied Ali the way someone might study a complex machine, taking in the posture, the muscle definition, the way weight was distributed across his frame. "Boxing is effective within its context," Lee said finally. "Context." Ali laughed, but not mockingly, more curious than dismissive. "Man, when someone's throwing punches at your head, there ain't no context. There's just fast and slow. Hit and don't get hit." Lee considered this. That is one approach. The response was so neutral, so non-committal, that it seemed to irritate some of Ali's people. They had expected either deference to the champion or some kind of challenge. What they got instead was analysis delivered in a tone that suggested the question itself might be based on incomplete understanding. Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, stepped forward. He had seen this kind of encounter before. Different martial arts instructors meeting the champ, usually leading to friendly demonstrations that established proper hierarchy without anyone losing face. Bruce, Angelo said, why don't you show Muhammad some of those techniques you do? Lee looked directly at Ali. Ali stepped closer, not threatening, but asserting presence through physical proximity. What kind of demonstration? Controlled contact. First touch ends the engagement. The suggestion hung in the air. Ali's people exchanged glances. This wasn't polite anymore. It was a test. Touch? Ali asked. You think you can touch me? The question was asked casually, but everyone in the room understood its significance. Muhammad Ali did not get touched often. His defensive skills were legendary. His speed allowed him to avoid punches that other heavyweights could not see coming. I think it is possible, Lee replied. Ali smiled. Brother, I'm too fast, too smooth. Nobody touches Muhammad Ali when he doesn't want to be touched. Would you like to test that assumption? The challenge was delivered so quietly, with such apparent lack of emotion, that it took several seconds for people to realize what had just been proposed. Bruce Lee, who weighed 135 pounds, was suggesting he could land a technique on the heavyweight champion of the world. Most of the room believed he was about to embarrass himself. Angelo stepped between them. Gentlemen, let's keep this friendly. Just a demonstration. Ali waved him off. It's okay, Angie. Let's see what this man can do. But there was something in Ali's voice now that had not been there before. A slight edge that suggested his ego was becoming involved in what had started as casual curiosity. The center of the room was cleared quickly. Equipment was moved to the walls. A space roughly 20 feet square was created, with the two fighters facing each other across 6 feet of open floor. Ali removed his training shirt, revealing the physique that had carried him through championship after championship. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, long arms that created tremendous leverage advantage. Every muscle group defined by years of professional conditioning. Lee removed his jacket and shirt. His build was completely different. Lean muscle without bulk. Definition that spoke of speed and precision rather than power. He looked like a different species of athlete entirely. The physical contrast was stark and uncomfortable. Under normal circumstances, in any normal fight, Ali's size and reach advantages would be decisive factors. They faced each other in fighting positions. Ali dropped into his familiar stance, left foot forward, hands up in the classic boxer's guard, weight balanced on the balls of his feet. He began the subtle head movement that had frustrated heavyweight punchers for years. Lee stood completely upright, no guard, arms relaxed at his sides. He looked casual, almost disinterested, but his eyes never left Ali's center of mass. Come on then, Ali said. Let's see what you got. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Ali continued his defensive movement, small shifts of head and shoulders that made him difficult to target. Lee remained motionless, apparently studying the patterns. Then Lee moved. The movement was not dramatic. No flying techniques or spinning attacks. Lee simply stepped forward at an angle, closing half the distance between them. His hands remained at his sides. Ali shifted back easily. Too easily. Someone near the wall smiled. For a brief moment, the room relaxed. This was how it was supposed to go. The small man advancing, the champion retreating comfortably. Natural order maintained. Lee stopped moving. He had learned something. But the room had learned something different. Again, Ali said, settling back into his stance. But now there was something else in his posture. A slight loosening. Not tactical, gestural. Ali lowered his hands slightly, not as a strategy, as a statement, a way of saying, go ahead. Lee advanced again, this time at a different angle. Ali adjusted, maintaining distance but with less urgency than before. The first exchange had confirmed what everyone expected. Lee stopped again. "You're not even trying to hit me," Ali observed, his voice carrying new confidence. "I am studying your defensive patterns," Lee replied. "How you create distance, which directions you favor, how you redistribute weight under pressure." Ali was intrigued despite himself. No one had ever described his fighting in such analytical terms, like a mathematical problem to be solved rather than a physical challenge to be overcome. "Okay," Ali said, his hands dropping another inch. "Study this." Ali threw a jab. Not full power, but serious speed. The kind of punch that had surprised professional heavyweight contenders. No one in the room could say exactly when it happened. Ali stopped moving. Not abruptly, just paused. His jab had been thrown. His arm was extended, but something was different about his posture. His breathing had changed. The room went completely silent. Someone whispered, "Did he touch him?" Ali stood perfectly still for several seconds, his expression unreadable. Then he looked down at his chest, where Bruce Lee's fingertips rested lightly against his sternum. "How?" Ali asked. Ali's eyes narrowed. For a moment, he looked almost offended, not hurt, but challenged. "That wasn't a touch," he said quietly. "That was timing." He nodded once, as if deciding something. "Do it again. Right now." Lee stepped back. "You signal your intentions before you execute them. Small movements that precede the large ones. Your shoulder drops slightly before the jab. Your weight shifts to your front foot. Your breathing pattern changes." Ali lowered his arm slowly. The room remained frozen. No one was entirely certain what they had witnessed, but everyone understood something significant had occurred. "Do it again," Ali said, but his voice carried a different quality now. Less certainty, more urgency. This time, Ali didn't jab playfully. He stepped in with intent. Not power, but ownership. The kind of intent that says, "I will erase this." Angelo took one step forward, not to stop it, to be close enough to stop it if it turned wrong. If this went wrong, it wouldn't end as a story, because now it wasn't curiosity in Ali's posture. It was pride. They repeated the exercise. Ali tried different punches, different timing. Each attempt ended with the same result. Lee avoiding the attack with minimal movement and making contact before Ali could adjust, though the contact itself remained almost imperceptible to observers. But before the third attempt, something shifted. Lee didn't move immediately, not because he was afraid, because for the first time in the room, control wasn't guaranteed. Ali was no longer testing. He wasn't trying to learn anymore. He was trying to erase. After the third demonstration, murmurs began in the room. Nobody celebrated. Nobody explained it. They just stood there. After the fifth demonstration, Ali stepped back, breathing harder than usual. Not from physical exertion, but from mental effort. He was trying to process an experience that did not fit any framework he understood. "I don't get it," Ali admitted. Angelo had been watching with the eye of someone who had seen thousands of hours of training. What he was witnessing made no sense, according to everything he knew about combat sports. "Mohammed," Angelo said quietly, "this isn't boxing. This is something else entirely." Lee began putting his shirt back on. Fighting is the expression of individual capacity under specific conditions. Change the conditions. Change the outcome. "What do you mean?" "Boxing has parameters, ring boundaries, weight classes, prohibited techniques, gloved hands. Within those parameters, you have achieved mastery. Outside those parameters." Lee left the sentence unfinished. Ali sat down heavily on a bench. His entire identity was built around being untouchable in combat. The fastest heavyweight in history, the most elusive target, and this small man had touched him repeatedly in ways he could not fully comprehend or prevent. The room didn't relax. It reorganized itself around silence. Conversations resumed, but in hushed tones. People avoided direct eye contact with either fighter. Would this work in a real fight? Ali asked. Against you? Against anyone? Lee considered the question carefully. Real fighting has no rules, no boundaries, no prohibited techniques, no weight classes. Under those conditions, different factors become important. Size matters less, speed matters more, understanding matters most. Understanding of what? Of distance and timing, of your own capabilities and limitations, of your opponent's patterns and habits, of the space between you and how to control it. The conversation continued for another hour. Lee asked questions about martial arts philosophy, about training methods, about the differences between sport fighting and personal combat. Lee answered thoughtfully, without condescension or boasting. What had started as a casual demonstration had become something deeper, a masterclass in combat theory, delivered to someone who had assumed he already understood fighting completely. When Lee finally prepared to leave, Ali walked him toward the exit. Bruce, Ali said, would you teach me some of this stuff? You already understand more than you realize, Lee replied. You have perfect timing and distance control. You read opponents better than anyone I have observed. You simply do it within a specific framework. So expand the framework, if that interests you. They shook hands at the door. Ali's hand was larger, but Lee's grip carried surprising strength. Will I see you again? Ali asked. Perhaps. Lee left the gymnasium quietly, walking to his car without ceremony or fanfare. No interviews were given. No publicity was generated. No official record was made of what had occurred. Inside the gym, Ali returned to his training, but something fundamental had changed. He worked the heavy bag differently, paying attention to balance and positioning in ways he had not considered before. He practiced footwork that incorporated lateral movement and angle changes that seemed borrowed from other disciplines. Angelo noticed the differences immediately. What are you thinking about, Muhammad? Distance, Ali said, continuing to work the bag. Timing, space. You thinking about fighting that little guy? Ali stopped punching and looked at his trainer. I'm thinking about fighting everyone differently. Over the following months, Ali's style evolved subtly. He incorporated more lateral movement, more defensive positioning that emphasized angles rather than pure backward motion. When reporters asked about changes in his approach, he would smile and give vague answers about studying all aspects of combat. He never mentioned Bruce Lee by name. Lee, for his part, never spoke publicly about the encounter. When asked directly about meeting Muhammad Ali, he would confirm that they had met, but offer no details about their interaction. The demonstration remained private, as it had been intended. Years later, after both men had finished their competitive careers, they would occasionally encounter each other at Hollywood events or charity functions. Their conversations were always brief and polite. No references were made to what had happened in that private gymnasium, but observers noted a mutual respect that seemed based on shared understanding rather than celebrity courtesy. In 1974, Ali fought George Foreman in Zaire. His strategy for that fight, using angles, timing, and defensive positioning to neutralize a larger opponent's advantages, bore subtle similarities to concepts he had encountered in a private gym the previous year. When asked later about the tactical approach that won him the championship, Ali spoke about the importance of studying different forms of combat, of learning from teachers who understood aspects of fighting that traditional boxing did not address. He never provided specifics. The story of the encounter survived only in the memories of the people who had been present that afternoon. None of them spoke about it publicly. Professional discretion, respect for privacy, and an understanding that some moments were too significant to be reduced to entertainment, kept the details away from reporters and historians. But the effects were visible to those who knew what to look for. Both men were changed by the brief interaction, though in different ways and to different degrees. Ollie gained an appreciation for combat concepts that existed outside his previous experience. Lee gained confirmation that his theories could work against the highest level of athletic opposition. The gymnasium, where the encounter took place, was eventually demolished and replaced by a shopping center. No plaque marks the location. No historical significance is acknowledged. But for a few hours on a February afternoon in 1973, two of the greatest fighters who ever lived tested their understanding against each other in complete privacy, with no cameras recording and no crowds watching. What they learned from each other remained between them, preserved in memory rather than documentation, honored through silence rather than publicity. Ali did not lose that day, but something he had relied on for his entire career never worked the same way again. And from that point on, Ali didn't fear losing. He feared being read.